For my 35th birthday, my husband Daniel unveiled a stunning piece of art in front of all our friends, calling it a perfect symbol of our 10-year marriage. Hours later, hidden in the hallway, I overheard my sister Savannah on the phone. "He bought it for me." "Of course," she whispered, laughing. "But we're just letting my sister think it's hers for now." In that single moment, I realized the beautiful painting wasn't a symbol of our marriage, it was a tombstone. Before we jump into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories reach and connect with amazing viewers like you. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next surprising turn in our journey. Now, get comfortable and let's dive into a tale that will leave you inspired and intrigued. My name is Natalie, and for the longest time, I believed my life was a structure built to last. For my 35th birthday, my husband Daniel unveiled a stunning abstract painting in front of all our friends, his arm wrapped securely around my waist. He called it a perfect symbol of our 10-year marriage complex, beautiful, and a solid investment in our future. His words filled our restored Chicago brownstone, a home I had poured my architect's soul into. And for a moment, everything felt perfect. Hours later, hidden in the soft shadows of the hallway, I overheard my sister Savannah on the phone, her voice a low, conspiratorial whisper. "He bought it for me, of course," she said, followed by a light, tinkling laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "But we're just letting my sister think it's hers for now. It's easier that way." In that single, shattering moment, I realized the beautiful painting wasn't a symbol of our marriage, it was its tombstone. Savannah had arrived 2 months prior, a refugee from her own failed Hollywood dreams, carrying 2 oversized suitcases and an aura of entitlement that filled every room she entered. She was the golden child who had finally stumbled. And my mother, Sharon, had called me in a panic, her voice laced with a familiar blend of drama and command. "Natalie, you have to take her in. She has nowhere else to go. Your father and I just don't have the space." It was a lie. Of course. Their sprawling suburban home had plenty of space. What they lacked was the patience to deal with Savannah's daily theatrics. So, she came to us, and the carefully balanced ecosystem of my home was immediately thrown into chaos. Daniel, my husband, was immediately protective of her. He saw her as a wounded bird, while I saw the same manipulative sister who had spent our childhood perfecting the art of getting what she wanted. "She needs to be protected, Nat," he'd say, his voice soft. When I pointed out that Savannah had once again borrowed and ruined one of my expensive cashmere sweaters without asking. "She's been through a lot." He started small, offering to help her sort out her finances. As a successful financial advisor, it seemed like a logical, kind gesture. But those sessions in his home office, with the door firmly closed, grew longer and more frequent. The first real alarm bell, after the incident with the painting, was the change in our home's atmosphere. The air grew thick with inside jokes I wasn't privy to, shared glances that held entire conversations, and late-night glasses of wine in the kitchen long after I'd gone to bed. Exhausted from managing a demanding project at my firm, I would come downstairs in the morning to find 2 glasses in the sink, a faint, cloying scent of Savannah's perfume hanging in the air. When I asked Daniel about it, he'd just smile vaguely and say, "Oh, Savannah couldn't sleep, we just talked for a bit." He made it sound so innocent, yet it felt like a trespass, a secret club being formed in the heart of my sanctuary. The financial signs, the ones I'd been trained my whole life to ignore in favor of trust, started to become unavoidable. I was the one who managed our joint credit card statements, a habit from the early days of our marriage. Suddenly, charges started appearing that made no sense. Dinners for 2 at intimate, romantic restaurants I'd never been to, tickets to concerts for bands I knew Daniel disliked, but Savannah loved. When I confronted him, his explanations were always smooth, plausible, and coated in a thin layer of condescension. "That was for a client, Natalie. You know I have to entertain them," he'd say. He had a way of twisting my words, making my valid concerns sound like the ravings of a stressed, overly emotional woman. For a terrifying period, it almost worked. I started to question if I was just being jealous, a bad sister. The doubt was a fog that clouded my judgment. Until I found the empty jewelry box, I was looking for a spare car key in the glove compartment of Daniel's sedan when my fingers brushed against a small, velvety box tucked deep underneath a stack of old insurance papers. It was from a very high-end, exclusive jeweler downtown. My heart did a foolish little leap. Maybe it was an early anniversary gift. But when I opened it, it was empty. There was just the indent in the satin where a delicate necklace had once rested. I never received a necklace. I never saw the box again. And when I subtly asked Daniel if he'd been shopping for anything special lately, he just laughed and said, "Only for you, always." A lie so smooth it felt like an insult. The point of no return came on a Tuesday. Daniel told me he had to fly to New York for a last-minute 2-day business trip to close a major deal. He packed his carry-on, kissed me goodbye with a frustratingly convincing display of affection, and left for the airport. That afternoon, an automated email landed in my inbox. It wasn't spam. It was a flight confirmation from an airline. My eyes scanned the text, my blood turning to ice. The email thanked me for my recent purchase. The flight was not to New York. It was to a luxury beach resort in Miami, and listed right below Daniel's name, as the second passenger on the itinerary, was my sister Savannah Smith. He hadn't just lied about who he was with, he had lied about where he was even going. The fog of doubt vanished, replaced by the cold, clear certainty of betrayal. A strange calm washed over me, the kind that precedes a demolition. The architect in my soul took over, seeing the compromised foundation, the structural failures, the irreversible decay of what I had built. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I began to draft a new blueprint. My first call was not to him, or to her, or to my mother. It was to the best divorce lawyer in Chicago, a woman known for her quiet, methodical dismantling of powerful men in that first meeting. I laid out my suspicions, and she listened without judgment. "Suspicion is one thing," she said, her voice even. "Proof is armor." So, my next step was to hire a private investigator, a discreet man who promised results, not comfort. I gave him the flight details to Miami and a simple instruction: I didn't need a soap opera. I just needed confirmation for legal purposes. A photograph, a video, something undeniable that would stand up in court while he worked. I began the quiet, meticulous process of building my lifeboat. I met with my financial planner and my lawyer, and we executed a plan I had been formulating in the back of my mind. I established a new corporation, solely under my name. I opened new bank accounts, and I began redirecting the income from my personal client projects work that was entirely separate from our joint assets into those new accounts. I was constructing a firewall, brick by invisible brick. All the while, I played the part of the supportive, slightly lonely wife. I texted Daniel, "Hope the meetings in New York are going well, miss you," while simultaneously reviewing wire transfer confirmations on my laptop. He'd reply with details about his big deal, a work of fiction so elaborate I almost had to admire his audacity. He was building a fantasy, while I was building an exit. The irony was not lost on me. I was leaving him with the facade, the hollowed-out structure of our life together, while I was quietly securing the real assets: my future, my career, and my sanity. The email from the investigator arrived on a Thursday morning. The subject line was blank. There was only one attachment: a short, silent video file. My hand trembled as I clicked on it. The video was clearly shot from a distance, slightly grainy, but the subjects were unmistakable. There, on a sun-drenched beach in Miami, was Daniel, carefully applying sunscreen to Savannah's back. She was laughing, tilting her head back in a way that was both familiar and sickening, and around her neck, gleaming against her sun-kissed skin, was the delicate gold necklace from the empty velvet box. They looked like a couple on their honeymoon, blissfully unaware of the world and completely unaware of the life they were destroying back home. I watched it once, then closed my laptop. I had my proof. The demolition could now begin. I spent the rest of the day in a state of hyper-focused activity. I contacted movers and arranged for my most important personal belongings: my books, my design awards, family heirlooms from my grandparents, not my parents, to be moved into a secure storage unit the following morning. I methodically went through the house, the home I had lovingly designed, and mentally cataloged what was ours and what was mine. The structure was still beautiful, but it was now just a house, a shell. The warmth had gone. replaced by the cold reality of what had happened within its walls. They came home that evening, tanned, relaxed, and carrying bags filled with souvenirs. They walked into the foyer, laughing about something that had happened on their trip. I was waiting for them in the living room. I hadn't packed my clothes yet. I wanted them to see me one last time in our home. I didn't get up. I simply turned my laptop, which was sitting on the coffee table, to face them. I pressed play. The silent video of the Miami beach filled the screen, the loop starting over and over again. Daniel froze, his face draining of all color. His travel bag slipped from his hand and hit the polished hardwood floor with a dull thud. Savannah's smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic before her well-rehearsed victimhood persona took over. "What is this?" she stammered, her voice rising. "Are you spying on us? I can't believe you would do this." "Natalie." I ignored her completely. My eyes were locked on Daniel. "New York looks sunny," I said. My voice dangerously calm. Beside the laptop was a thick manila envelope. "These are the divorce papers," I continued, sliding the envelope across the table. "They've already been filed. My lawyer is filing an emergency motion this morning to have our joint assets frozen. I suggest you find your own lawyer, quickly." He just stood there, speechless, a man who always had an answer suddenly finding himself with no words left. Before I could walk away, my phone rang. It was my mother, Sharon, no doubt calling for a glowing report on Savannah's return. I answered it, putting it on speaker for them both to hear. "Natalie, honey, how is Savannah? Did she have a good time relaxing after her trip?" Her cheerful voice chirped. I took a slow breath. "Mom," I said, my voice flat. "Daniel and I are getting a divorce. He took Savannah to Miami and has been having an affair with her." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. Then, my mother's voice returned, but the warmth was gone, replaced by a sharp, defensive edge. "Well, that boy always did have a soft spot for her," she said, as if that explained everything. "But Savannah is fragile, Natalie, and you're the older sister. You need to be the strong one here and learn to forgive. You are deliberately trying to tear this family apart out of selfishness." That was it. That was the moment every last shred of obligation, every ounce of filial duty I had ever felt, evaporated. They were all in on it. Not the affair, perhaps, but the underlying ideology. Savannah's happiness was paramount, and my feelings were disposable. I didn't say goodbye. I just ended the call and blocked her number. Then my father's, then Savannah's. I looked at the two of them, standing there amidst the ruins of our life. I walked over to the wall where the beautiful, symbolic painting hung. I took it down, walked over to Savannah, and pushed it into her arms. "Here," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You can have it. It was always yours anyway." Then I picked up my purse, walked out the front door, and never looked back. 5 years later, the soft gray light of Portland, Oregon felt more like home than the harsh Chicago sun ever had. I had moved west with nothing but my savings and a burning need to build something that was entirely my own. I founded a small, independent architecture firm specializing in sustainable, minimalist living spaces. My work was my therapy, a way to create order and beauty out of chaos. The firm thrived, earning a reputation for its clean lines and thoughtful design. I had built a new life, a new foundation, on my own terms. And I had met Graham. He was a furniture craftsman, a man whose hands were calloused and gentle, who could turn a piece of reclaimed wood into something that felt alive. He was quiet where Daniel had been loud, steady where Daniel had been slick. We met when I commissioned him to build pieces for a client's home, and our conversations about dovetail joints and wood grains slowly evolved into conversations about life, dreams, and second chances. We built a relationship slowly, carefully, like one of his handcrafted tables. We married in a simple ceremony in the forest, and a year later, our son, Leo, was born. My life was full, not with the performative perfection I had with Daniel, but with a quiet, authentic joy. The past was a ghost that rarely visited, until an email slipped through my spam filter one rainy Tuesday afternoon. The sender was my mother, using a new account. The subject line read, "Your father." My heart constricted with a complicated mix of dread and lingering duty. I opened it. It wasn't a plea for reconciliation. It was a summons. My father, Richard, had suffered a major stroke a few months back. The letter detailed his declining health, the mounting medical bills, and the strain it was putting on them. But the real request was buried beneath the layers of guilt-inducing prose. Sharon wasn't asking for money directly. That would have been too simple. She was asking for my success. She wrote that since Daniel had left Savannah for a younger woman years ago. Savannah had been struggling, now with a young child of her own and no real career. My mother's plan was audacious in its manipulation. She wanted me to use my professional reputation to help them sell the Chicago house at an inflated price. She wanted me to leverage my network to find Savannah a little interior design job in Portland. She wanted me to use the life I had built from their wreckage to clean up the mess they had created. I showed the email to Graham. He read it, his expression hardening. He simply said, "What do you want to do?" His unconditional support was the anchor I needed. I replied to my mother, agreeing to one video call, and one only, when the time came. I sat at my desk, Graham just out of frame but his hand resting reassuringly on my shoulder, on the screen. Their faces appeared, worn and tired. My father looked diminished, a shadow of the man I remembered. My mother and Savannah looked haggard, their familiar sense of entitlement replaced by a desperate, grasping energy. They started with hollow apologies, a clumsy attempt to rewrite history. Then came the real agenda. Sharon detailed their financial crisis, painting a bleak picture of their future. "We need you, Natalie," she said, her voice cracking. "You were always the strong one, the capable one. You know how to fix things." It was the same old story. I was the fixer, the responsible one, the one who was expected to sacrifice for their comfort. I let her finish. I listened to Savannah's tearful, self-pitying account of her struggles as a single mother. When they were done, I took a deep breath. "I'm truly sorry to hear about Dad's health," I said, and I meant it. "But I will not be using the life I built from scratch to rescue you from the consequences of your own choices." My mother's face contorted with anger. "After everything we did for you," she began, but I cut her off, my voice calm but as unyielding as steel. "Everything you did was for yourselves, and for Savannah, the life I have now. I built it not because of you, but in spite of you. That house in Chicago is your responsibility. Savannah is your responsibility. My responsibility is here," I said, gesturing to my own peaceful home, with my husband and my son. Before they could respond, I said my final piece. "I wish Dad a peaceful recovery, but my involvement in your lives ends with this call." I ended the meeting, the digital connection severing the last, frayed thread to my past. But I wasn't quite finished. I opened a new tab in my browser and went to the website of a reputable Chicago charity that helps single mothers get professional training and find stable employment. I made a significant donation, enough to sponsor a woman through an entire year of their program. I made the donation in the names of Richard and Sharon. Then, I took a screenshot of the confirmation receipt. I found the old family group chat on my phone, the one that had been silent for 5 years. I posted the screenshot and added one final message. "I've helped a single mother in Chicago get a fresh start. I hope this brings you both some peace. This is the last time you will hear from me." Then I blocked them for good, and finally, I was free. I had taken the rubble of the life they had wrecked, and I had used it to build a foundation for someone else. And in doing so, I had finally, truly, built a home for myself,